Well, you went through the different kinds of weather. A lot of times the snow, and the rain, the dry weather, and the dust storm.
Sometimes you didn't have any pins to pin those cattle, but you had to night guard them. In the morning, they didn't say, well, you worked last night, you can sleep all day. There was no such a thing. You just rolled up your bed and changed horses and started driving.
And a lucky cowboy that got maybe 2 or 3 hours sleep.
You slept most of the doggone time on that horse driving those cattle. After, you're on there so long, well, the horse will kind of get used to it, and he'll graze, and if there's a cow sits back, well, he'll turn, and when he turns, you wake up, and you know there's something wrong somewhere, and that's how you drove.
Cowboys nowadays don't even know how to drive cattle.
No way.
They don't know what the point and the swing and the drag is. It's all they know is to get behind and try to push the drag over the point. What I mean, they just get behind and try to drive the back end over the front end. You don't drive cattle that way. You didn't used to, you do now, but I guess you didn't used to.
Mesas that a few hours before looked deserted now come to life.
My last drive, I was on it 45 days.
And we drove them for miles and miles and miles.
Where I was raised, we drove those cattle about 100 miles.
Our part of the country, if it was dry and the cattle hadn't been doing no good, well, the wagon boss would hold you from driving too fast. You would run to graze that land, as he comes along. By the time he'd get to town with them, well, they'd pick up some weight.
The trick was to get your cattle into Magdalena, get them loaded, and not lose weight.
There was people coming with cattle all the time. There was bunches of cattle, one right behind the other, coming in here.
And you timed your travel across the plains to meet a certain date of when the cars were there to be loaded.
Antelope which graze the open range scurry before the drive. At each location, the cook makes camp. Yes, he's the genial boss of his own domain.
He was so hungry that you'd eat anything, and if you could get to any kind of food, well, it was good. On that 45-day drive, we had a fellow was cooking. He had some cattle in the herd, and he'd never cooked for camp. So he was the sorriest that I can ever remember.
Tired and dusty from their morning's work, the cowboys need no special invitation to head for Chuck. Chuck wagon food is prepared over an open fire. The cook prides himself on timing his noonday meal so that it is ready and steaming hot when the herd reaches camp.
If we had breakfast, we were lucky if we had something to eat by 8 or 9 o'clock that night. And we didn't have any sandwiches if we had a piece of jerky maybe in our pocket, saddle pocket. That was fine. But these modern days, no, they come in for lunch at noon.
There is always plenty, and second helpings are the rule.
You buy a lot of old bread and cans of tomatoes and onions. And he'd chop these onions and put some bread all over the bottom of that Dutch oven. And then fill it full of onions and then pour the tomatoes on top of it, and that was our dinner.